Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. Well, yesterday at 3 p.m. on this show, I made a prediction, and I want to remind ourselves of that. This comes just, 10 days, 2 weeks, after somebody who was ostensibly a Trump supporter was executed in the street. I mean, we're not talking about theoretical violence anymore. We're seeing it, repeatedly seeing it, people being persecuted. And you're going to see it, I said in my monologue, I said you're going to see it more and more with the hand down of the Breonna Taylor case today and what happened there. You're going to see more and more violence and riots and looting. And what did we see? Across the nation last night, 2 police officers shot in Louisville, Molotov cocktails thrown at law enforcement, riots in Portland, protests in D.C., looting, businesses smashed, ordinary people harassed again. And the truth is, these riots have been seeded by the political left for some time now. Expecting an election night blowout, left-wing mega donors have been pumping money into hard left street movements in order to prepare them for their street fight on November the 4th. That's why a U-Haul truck pulled up in Louisville, handing out riot equipment to these so-called protesters. The renter of the truck is believed to be somebody called Holly Zoller, who works for a group called the Bail Project, which professes to pay bail for people as an act of resistance. They say they're resisting a system that criminalizes race and poverty, and that it is an act of solidarity with local communities and movements for decarceration. Sounds like total and utter BS to me, frankly. It sounds like just another one of the thousands of hard leftist groups around the country, Marxist groups, which use racial community concerns as a front for something far more nefarious, bringing the United States to its knees. And these groups openly work with and are benefactors of big corporate enterprises. For instance, the Bail Project brags about partnering with TED as in TED Talk, on its website. TED's top-line speakers, Bill Gates, of course, Jeff Bezos, naturally, Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Gordon Brown, Pope Francis, and more. In other words, it's a hub of globalists. And the question needs to be asked at this point, which side is the tail and which side is the dog? The dog is smarter than its tail, but if its tail was smarter, the tail would wag the dog. So with a hardline Marxist with over 100 years of experience in destruction, are they the tail or the globalists who've had decades of experience in destruction? The tail. Maybe it doesn't matter. But I've always taken the approach that in order to fully assail one's enemy, one must first identify. The president has said this himself many times. Here's where he said it, referring to radical Islamic terrorism in 2016.
Anyone who cannot name our enemy is not fit to lead our country.
But again, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe both teams are as bad as one another, and maybe they're just merging to the point where a separation isn't even needed. George Soros is as much Antifa as he is BLM, as he is a globalist. Maybe we need to come up with a new term that describes them all, or maybe one already exists. Evil. There's an awful lot of evil in the world today, whether the Chinese Communist Party, the mullahs in Iran, the animals who blow up children's concerts in England, the blackface governor of Virginia, virtually all of Hollywood, the Marxist shooting at police, many in the corporate world, and of course I can't forget the bigots who are opposing the SCOTUS nomination of Amy Coney Barrett for the simple fact that the woman is a Catholic. Disgusting. Or to borrow from the parlance of Hillary Clinton, it's deplorable. And while the media's heads continue to spin over the farcical claim that Trump will somehow cling to the resolute desk and refuse to leave power, the real news out there is the coming coup unfolding before our very eyes from the political left. Electoral commissions, transition projects, impeachment witnesses showing back up as experts on elections, the perpetual hiding of Joe Biden. It all points to something this country has never experienced before. And I don't even know if the word coup is strong enough. And speaking of Joe Biden, did you notice his campaign called a lid? That means they wrapped the candidate's business for the day at 9:20 a.m. this morning. That's the 7th time they've done that in 14 days. What would happen if you pulled a lid at work at 9:20 a.m. for the past 50% of the last week? You'd get fired. You certainly wouldn't get a promotion, and you definitely wouldn't get made president of the company. So why should Joe Biden, who can't even be bothered to audition for the job, be given it? When we come back, we'll talk to Natalie Winters about hiding Joe Biden, about Time magazine, about how the Chinese state media is now admitting that Joe Biden is only talking tough on China to get elected. This is the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, broadcasting live from downtown Washington, D.C. And D.C. was no picnic last night either. In fact, this morning, at about 7 a.m., I awoke to the sound of some sort of protest or something going past my house this morning. There's a lot of it going on, and it will continue. There are a lot of stories that we're covering over at thenationalpulse.com right now. I want to make sure that you're all subscribed. There's a newsletter. Sign up on the website. I want to make sure that you're all getting the push notifications in your browser. Make sure that you agree to that when you go to thenationalpulse.com. And you can go to fundrealnews.com to support our work. Natalie Winters, our senior reporter, joins us here today. Natalie, we're going to get to CGTN, your favorite. Is that your favorite channel apart from Real America's Voice?
Probably. It's a love-hate relationship.
Which one? Which one's better?
Real America's Voice is
No, I think
superior.
you watch more CGTN.
I do watch a lot of CGTN.
The Chinese state television network. We'll get to that in a second. I want to talk to you about this hiding Biden stuff, right? I mean, I said it in the monologue. How can this guy get away with campaigning for the president, but only 50% of the time? Bizarre.
Exactly. There's a lot of talk about the enthusiasm gap for Biden versus Trump, but there also seems to be an enthusiasm gap in terms of campaigning between President Trump and Joe Biden, given that for the last 2 weeks, only 7 days, Joe Biden has campaigned past midday. It's certainly interesting, whether it's hiding Biden, Beijing Biden, or even basement Biden, whatever you want to choose.
Sleepy Joe.
Exactly. On the heels of that explosive report coming out of the Senate about his son's business dealings worth billions of dollars with a host of corrupt individuals and foreign governments, the following day, he capped his campaign activities at around 9:20 a.m. The day that the report came out, he said he didn't want to comment on the matter. So again, we don't see him on the campaign trail. As you said, how should he become president if he can't even put in the effort to campaign?
Well, you're saying maybe he's actually calling a lid on the days that he might get asked tough questions. The night before, where something might drop, some report might come out, he may be being scrutinized more in the media cycle, at least on right-wing media sites. We know the left-wing media and the establishment media doesn't do it. That's interesting. That may be something we need to look into.
Perhaps, because there's certainly no shortage of newsworthy material to cover from a campaign perspective, whether it's a vacant Supreme Court seat, the pandemic, like I said, that explosive Senate report, but the Biden campaign...
This isn't a boring election like 2016 was. This is actually an interesting one. We are pushed for time here. We're going to have Thomas Farnan, a lawyer friend of mine and author of a new book that we've actually worked on together. Well, he wrote it. I'm just helping push it out. I want to make that clear. On in the next segment. But while I have you, Natalie, we'll come back to you at the end of the show as well. While I have you, I want to ask you. Let's play the clip from CGTN. I want to ask you about this. Let's roll it.
When a politician keeps his or her viewpoint under wraps, it could show ignorance, indifference, or that the opinion is not yet made up. Biden could hardly be associated with the first two. In fact, he had a pretty solid and rosy view about China not so long ago.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. Guess what? They're not competition for us.
But as the campaign has heated up, his rhetoric changed. With the American public shifting against China and Trump playing up the issue, Biden changed his tune.
We should be moving 60% of our sea power to that area of the world to let, in fact, the Chinese understand that they're not going to go any further.
It is almost unavoidable for presidential candidates to change some policies mid-campaign. Sometimes it is born out of a genuine change of mind. Sometimes it is for the sake of winning the race.
Pretty damning evidence from some of Joe Biden's biggest cheerleaders, the Chinese Communist Party. Natalie, this is pretty extraordinary to see CGTN, which is one of the most forward-leaning mouthpieces of the Chinese Communist Party. It really tries to push out the Chinese Communist Party's line all over the world. It's in the English language. It's been based out of London, England before. So this isn't some backwater blog written by, a junior CCP official somewhere. This is the state party line. And the state party is saying, Biden had a rosy view of us, and now he's talking tough, but he's only talking tough to get elected.
Exactly. CGTN is probably the foremost propaganda organization on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. We've covered the outlet extensively. They love to write op-eds offering fawning praise over Joe Biden, but this time they took a bit of a different line, insisting that Joe Biden's, quote, rosy view of China has been abandoned, but only for a short period of time. That is the campaign. They go on in additional clips from the video to talk about how American polling has shifted to really oppose the Chinese Communist Party, whether it's the economic abuse we've endured for decades at the hand of the regime, or most recently the coronavirus pandemic, but they inextricably link Joe Biden's shift in talking tough on China to purely politicking for votes. And they say later in the video that they think there is a chance that they can, quote, maneuver the candidate potentially when he gets into the White House. So definitely a Trojan horse, not just for the radical left, but for the Chinese Communist Party.
It's an incredible story. I guess it must be the top link on the Drudge Report?
Certainly not.
It baffles me how all these outlets that have been around for decades and decades wouldn't see that as a genuine story. If Russia Today, you were going to say the same thing, right? Go, you say it. They like hearing from you more than me.
No, exactly. Whether it's the influence of Confucius Institutes on American college campuses to literal Chinese state media outlets effectively endorsing a Democratic presidential candidate. If you were to swap out Chinese for Russian, it'd be front page news on every single news outlet. You'd hear about it nonstop. They'd force President Trump to disavow, like they do with random individuals who seemingly endorsed President Trump throughout the 2016 election cycle. They force him to disavow. Yet here you have the Chinese Communist Party, who, as we saw yesterday, has extensive ties to Joe Biden through his son. And the mainstream media is totally okay with it. They don't push on it. They don't even report on it.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I'm glad we've got you around to do this and to bring this to people's attention. Natalie, the story is up on the National Pulse website. Chinese state media backs Biden, excuses his tough talk as politicking. Just while we still have Natalie Winters, I want to ask her about the Time magazine collaboration with the CCP-linked company. Natalie, Huawei.
Exactly. Huawei, it's been labeled as a national security threat by the Trump administration. The U.S. State Department has issued extensive reporting on the Chinese telecommunications company, branding it effectively an arm of the Chinese Communist Party, both in raising revenue for the regime and spreading their propaganda and their ability to influence our technological infrastructure. Yet the New York-based Time magazine, which is a frequent critic of President Trump, they have no issue partnering with the company to launch a, quote, Time for Kids magazine in Chinese language to be used throughout classrooms across the world, even in the United States.
Again, extraordinary stuff. You'd think other people would be reporting it, but that's okay, we will. And as the National Pulse continues to grow and grow, with your support, ladies and gentlemen, we can bring you more stories like that from around the world. Natalie Winters will join us back at the end of the show here today, so don't worry, she's not going away. I read the live chats in the breaks. I know you want as much Natalie as possible. And by the way, we decided, I guess, just by pure accident, on Wednesdays we wear pink. Isn't that right, Natalie?
Exactly.
That's what happened yesterday, by pure accident, so I guess that's the rule going forward from now on. We'll be back with more National Pulse with Thomas Farnan, author of The Russia Lie, a great monograph book coming out soon, brought to you by the National Pulse. We'll be right back. we're lied to a lot, really a lot. I mean, every news story seems to have a lie in the headline. Yesterday, CNBC rolls with, the president refuses to leave office. It's not what happened last night. That's not what the president said. And Katie McEnany cleared that up in the press conference today. It still wasn't clear to the reporters in the room. What are you saying? What are you saying? The Playboy journalist. Yeah, I read it for the articles too. The Playboy journalist says, win, lose or draw, will the president leave office, commit to a peaceful transition? Now, you don't commit to a peaceful transition if you win, right? You don't commit to a peaceful transition if you draw. But this is what the media is now. And my next guest has just spent so much time and effort and brain power on putting together the pieces of one of the biggest lies that we've heard for years and years. Thomas Farnan is the author of The Russia Lie. It's a new monograph that we're helping publish via the National Pulse. You can actually go to therussialie.com right now and actually purchase the book. You can also leave your email address if you want further updates about the book. But this is exclusive to this show and it's exclusive to this audience. So we want you all to get involved. TheRussiaLie.com. Thomas Farnan joins us now. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be with us. You've taken a lot of time out of a lot of days. I mean, this isn't something that you do full-time as a job. You're a lawyer, right? So tell us, what inspired you to write The Russia Lie?
Well, I'm a full-time practicing lawyer, and I'm a political essayist. I wrote for the New York Observer during the 2016 election. I predicted Trump's victory. And when Trump did win, there was this story that percolated out of the deep state, out of Washington, that somehow my vote, Tom Farnan's vote, was influenced by Vladimir Putin. And I never believed it. I always thought that this was just another way to condescend to people in Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia, another way to call us deplorables. And I said, okay, where's your evidence of that? And they said, the CIA and the FBI have it. It's top secret, and we can't tell you. And I waited and waited and waited for the evidence. And as we were waiting for the evidence, Trump was accused of colluding with Russia. And we fought that, and we fought it pretty hard, and we fought it successfully. And I think it's one of the great stories in American political history, how we undid the collusion hoax. But at the end of that collusion hoax, there still remains the question, did Putin interfere in the 2016 election? When Trump met with Putin in 2018 in Helsinki, President Trump said to the gathered media up at the podium with Vladimir Putin, I don't believe that Russia interfered in the election. And you'll recall everybody went nuts. They said, how can you say that? How can you turn on your own FBI? How can you turn on your CIA? And then we waited for the evidence. What is the evidence that Trump colluded? Even some conservative pundits, even some of our best and brightest conservative pundits, have held out that, Putin's a bad guy and he attacked America and he did interfere in our election. And the place that they held out is they said this Steele dossier, that primary subsource, was probably connected to Russian intelligence. And it may have been Putin interfering in the election to help Hillary, but Putin was interfering in the election. And then this July, Raheem, as you know, we learn who the primary subsource is, and it's Igor Danchenko. And Igor Danchenko is a Brookings Institution researcher. And he was interviewed by the FBI in February of 2017, and he said, I have no connections to Russian intelligence. And somehow we, the American people, are not told that. In fact, they continue, based on this lie, to pursue this political operation through the special counsel. It's notable that the only Russians that the special counsel indicted were those related to the Internet Research Agency. It was essentially a troll farm in Russia. And the theory that the special counsel had was that this troll farm engaged in a social media campaign to beam ideas into the heads of people like me in Pittsburgh to make us vote for Trump. When we see the evidence on the Internet Research Agency, however, it turns out that they bought $100,000 worth of Facebook ads. Only $40,000 worth of those ads were purchased before the election. And in the book that I've written and that you've edited, we have pictures of those Facebook ads, and they're ridiculous. They did not influence anyone or anything, and they are only marginally at best connected with anything having to do with American politics. Mueller made, I'd say, a lot of mistakes in his investigation, but the biggest mistake he made is he didn't only indict the people associated with the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, he indicted the company itself. And a little-known rule of American criminal law says that if you indict a company, they get to make an appearance in court through lawyers. For the people that he indicted, if they wanted to make an appearance and defend themselves, they would have had to travel from Russia and appear in court to defend themselves. But the company, the Internet Research Agency, hired a law firm, happened to be a Pittsburgh law firm, Reed Smith, with Washington offices, and they paid the money to defend themselves against the Justice Department's charge that they interfered in the 2016 election on behalf of Vladimir Putin. And Reed Smith trounced the Justice Department. The judge in the case enjoined the Justice Department from ever claiming that the Internet Research Agency had any connections to Putin, because there was no evidence of it. With that injunction in place, in one of these 5 p.m. Friday afternoon news drops, the Justice Department actually drops the case against the Internet Research Agency, the only case that Mueller brought against actual Russians.
Thomas, just hang there for a second. We have to jump to a quick break. I mean, everything you're saying is fascinating, and I want to give the audience a chance to digest it all. They should go to the RussiaLie.com. You can see the book up on your screen there, I hope, in just a second. There you go, the RussiaLie.com. Head on over there. Get yourself a copy of this thing. I've read it. I've gone through it. It's extraordinary. We'll be right back with more from Thomas Farnan. Well, welcome back to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, broadcasting live from Washington, D.C. My guest is Thomas Farnan, a lawyer and the author of The Russia Lie. You can get your hands on a copy of The Russia Lie, which is an incredible ebook that's being released with the assistance of the National Pulse. This is an exclusive that we're bringing to you here on this show today. And from the National Pulse website, we'll have that up on the site tomorrow as well. Thomas Farnan's just written some incredible articles about all of this. I asked him when we spoke to bring all of this stuff together for us. And that's what he's done here with The Russia Lie. So you can go to therussialie.com right now and support the work. Thomas, you wanted to keep this at an affordable price point. It's just $5 for people to get their hands on a copy of this. Before we pick back up with the point about the Internet Research Agency and the drop case there, I want to understand from you, as I said in the first segment with you, you're not a full-time political commentator or reporter or author. Just tell us a little bit about your thought process here.
Yeah, I'm a full-time practicing lawyer in Pittsburgh, and I saw in 2016 that something was happening, that people really were fed up with some of the fantasies that were being generated in Washington and the public policies that were based on those fantasies. And then all of a sudden, a real estate developer from New York shows up with his own brand of media savvy. But what we saw in him was the ability, I think, to make causal connections, the sorts of things we have to do at work. If we engage and indulge in a crazy fantasy like Russian collusion, we lose our job, we lose our business. So when we heard that Putin was beaming ideas into my head to make me vote for Trump, I immediately knew that that was false, that that was made up. And I was always suspicious of Washington and its ability to investigate its own lie. Really, this was a false flag political operation that was conducted against then candidate Trump in 2016. It gained some steam in 2016 when the DNC needs an explanation for emails that John Podesta lost in a phishing scheme. And the DNC comes up with some crazy idea that the Russians hacked the emails. And really, you got to read it in the book. I don't want to give away the ending, but there's no evidence that Russia hacked the emails. In fact, if you go through the sequence and what was disclosed and when it was disclosed, it's pretty obvious, I think, that it was a false flag political operation. We've written about this before, in the National Pulse and other places, and I've noticed in the things that I write that when I write about Russia, people are very interested in it. But I'm one of the few from our side, from the right, that has always said, wait a second, did Putin really interfere here? We solved collusion, and people should go to jail for perpetrating the collusion hoax. But there's a second side to that coin, and that is there was no interference either. There was nothing to collude in. It was Washington and Washington insiders protecting themselves against an outsider by making stuff up about Russia. We've distilled this book to 40 pages. We're only charging $5. I know that you're interested. It's a story that you're not going to read anywhere else. It ties up loose ends that are left untied in other sources, but this ties up all the loose ends. And this explains the entire story. And I think it is the most fascinating story in American political history since the sitting vice president, Aaron Burr, took out a pistol and shot Alexander Hamilton. That's how interesting I think this story is.
I agree. I think you're right, Thomas. I get pitched a lot on a lot of things. I'll say a couple of things about you. You're tenacious, and your work is it's comprehensive. It's unavoidable to when you go through this book, this monograph, whatever you want to call it, to say this is actually some of the best reporting and analysis of what really went on that's out there, and I was just so happy to help be a part of it. I know we wanted to get it out sooner. I've been a busy boy, and so we will, as I say, people are already subscribing, by the way. The RussiaLie.com, I checked in the break, we've already had some orders. I want to make sure that people know that those orders will be fulfilled this weekend, so if you want to sign up, you'll get it this weekend, the electronic book sent straight to you, whatever email address you sign up with, the RussiaLie.com. It's also on Twitter as well. I've been tweeting out about it, and I want the audience to go out there and make sure this thing goes viral. All of the Facebook groups that you're a member of, all of your Twitter feeds, your Parler feeds, send it to all of the influencers you know, all of the blue check marks on the political right who echo these things and who make sure that these things trend. I want you to hit them up in their replies. Make sure they see it, make sure they hear about it, make sure they retweet it. Tell them that this is the comprehensive thing that needs to be read by not just Americans, but people all over the world to understand what exactly took place in 2016. Thomas, I want to keep you around for just a few more minutes in the next segment, but before we go to a break, there was things in there that you taught me, because it was so hard to follow on from all of this Russia stuff. I was even accused many times over of being a Russian agent. There are members of the European Parliament who still to this day have websites up accusing me of being a Russian agent. Louise Mensch, I think, accused me of being a Russian agent. I've never been to Russia. The only thing I've ever written about Russia was a critical take about something. But that's how we've had to deal with this, right? We're always on the defensive. We're always got our hands up. We're always saying, no, look, I'm clean. Are you ready to be called a Russian agent after publishing this book?
I'm sure I will be, and that'll just make my day. It'll make me laugh. It won't make my day. It'll make me laugh. I did a lot of reading about what they did to you guys, Raheem, over Brexit, and they couldn't explain that. It's very similar. It's the hoi polloi, the people like me, the people in Pittsburgh that make a political decision that the elites can't explain. And they want to somehow blame Putin, as if Putin is putting these ideas in our head. No, Putin is not putting ideas in our head.
We're going to go to a quick break now. When we come back, we'll ask you about that. We'll finish up with Thomas Farnan, the author of The Russia Lie. Make sure you get your copy at therussialie.com, thenationalpulse.com. Have some new stories up. Go check them out in the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. Thomas Farnan, the orders are already flying in. I can see them live on my screen, so it looks like people are as interested in this book as you suspected they would be. The RussiaLie.com. The Russia Lie is a completed work that is being released this weekend, exclusive to us here at the National Pulse for the time being, but I'm sure it's going to take up legs of its own, Thomas, and I'm only too happy to help spread the word. You've done some amazing work here, and I suppose my question is, why? There's so much else going on in this election cycle. Why are we talking about 2016 again?
Look, we're going to see a lot of shenanigans in the coming weeks for the 2020 election, and to understand those and to face those properly and to defend ourselves against those, we have to finally fully understand what happened in 2016. We're almost there, but this completes the circle. We have to understand that Russia didn't interfere at all. There was no Russian interference to even collude with, and the story is amazing. And it's a story that I think your audience and conservatives and all Republicans should read, and Democrats too.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think I'm glad you added in Democrats too, and independents too, and people outside of the United States. It's such it makes for such compelling reading. We've got a few tweaks left to make to the publication before we launch it this weekend. So everybody ordering right now, you'll get it very, very soon. Our very own managing editor Nick Regan will be whose birthday it is today. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll be handling the order process, but you can make sure you get it at therussialie.com. Thomas, just before we let you go, could you tell our audience where they can follow you and your work, because you've made such a compelling case here? I'm sure people will be looking for you online.
I've written for many publications. I don't have a big social media presence. I'm on Twitter pretty much to follow my stuff. I do have a Twitter handle at @TFarnanLaw, and if you wanted to follow me there, I'll put stuff up. I write for you, Raheem, at the National Pulse, so I have a page there as well. I've written for American Greatness, Town Hall, the New York Observer, PJ Media. I've written for everybody, but I'm a guy from Pittsburgh. I don't often travel to New York or to Washington, D.C., and I write these essays between court dates and deposition dates because I think it's very important that people in Washington and the rest of the world see how we see and understand things in a place like Pittsburgh.
I don't really say this to lawyers very often, but your clients must be very lucky to have you. Your work is outstanding and very, very detailed. So, Thomas, if I'm ever in trouble, I'm coming to you for help. Thomas Farnan, thank you once again for joining us here on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Raheem.
I'm going to go back now to Natalie Winters. Natalie, we've got about... I guess there's about 12 minutes left to go here on the show today, and there are other stories out there at the moment that we want to bring to people's attention. So we've talked about Biden calling the campaign lid 14 days, and I really want to stress to people that how on earth can you audition for a job and not turn up 50% of the time? We've learned about what Chinese state media is admitting about Joe Biden's, his rosy take on them before talking tough, and why they're now talking tough, why he's now talking tough. But there are some other breaking stories that are interesting, and for regular readers of the National Pulse, you may have noticed we've built a new breaking section to the site. So right as you go to the homepage and you scroll a little bit down, there's now a little section. It's 3 stories in there. They're shorter stories. Typically what they are is the president said something interesting in a news conference, or we've connected a dot somewhere, but it's not worthy of an 800-word write-up. But we want to keep you invested in the story, and we want to keep you informed of developments as we go along. There are also things up here and there that may be getting covered in other outlets, but aren't necessarily covered with the right perspective or from the with bent on them. The mainstream media will always try and spin against the America First movement, especially against the president and against nationalism in general. So right now on the breaking site, Natalie, this story about investigators recovering discarded ballots, military ballots, just today. Can you just give us the basic info on that to keep the audience abreast?
Sure. So a small county in Pennsylvania, they discovered 9 ballots. All of them were cast for President Trump by members of our military, and they seemed to be discarded, meaning that they would not have been counted in the presidential election had these investigators not uncovered them.
So hold on, but I keep getting told by Brian Stelter and by Wolf Blitzer and by the Drudge Report that, and I do lump all those people in together now, that the president's making up stories about ballots and about the mail-in ballot process and about how this thing is going to be rigged against him effectively. This doesn't sound made up to me.
Not at all. Actually, the FBI worked together with local law enforcement to uncover these ballots, and while it's just 9 ballots, which again, for the 9 individuals who cast that's their say in this election, I think it's a symptom of a much broader problem with this whole mail-in ballot system, universal mail-in voting, which we've never really experienced before in the United States.
Now, the left will make the excuse now that, this proves why we need more time after the election to make sure all the ballots are counted. So they've set up a system that will necessarily fail, and it was obvious it was going to fail from day one in order to string out election day or election week or election month, as they're calling it, right?
Exactly, and as we see, and we'll have forthcoming reporting on the National Pulse, a host of people linked to these social media platforms who will perpetuate these narratives that come election night, we don't need to know who the president is, and they'll string out who's going to be our president for the next 4 years. A lot of those individuals have been added to the Biden transition team, including Twitter's top lobbyist, a former chief counsel for Facebook, a former lobbyist for Apple, the list goes on.
Well, in the next segment, we'll get to who AOC is partying with. It's up on the nationalpulse.com right now. It's not Nick Regan, but it is Nick Regan's birthday today, our managing editor over at the National Pulse. Stay tuned, because we have some very special information for you about Nick Regan. We'll be back with what he's sitting right here. I'm going to make him sit here as we do it. This is the National Pulse, and we'll be right back. Happy birthday to you. It's Nick Regan's birthday. Nick is our managing editor, and I want to put this picture up on screen of Nick on his wedding day of all times. Nick with the tie. Look, let's get a split. Can we get a split screen of me and Nick here? Nick in the tie like this for his wedding day. In fact, why don't we ask Nick what on earth he was playing at? Nick Regan is here live in studio with us. Nick, what were you playing at with that tie?
It was a clip-on.
It was a clip-on.
A clip-on tie.
It's extraordinary. Can we throw to Nick right now? I want to. Let's get that. Yeah, look at him right there. There he is. Happy birthday, Nick. Wave to the crowd. Nick's telling me that he wants more tweets Twitter followers. So that's how we're going to get them for you, Nick. Thank you for being here for this moment. Now, happy birthday. What did I get you for your birthday? Show the audience. Can we get the camera back on Nick? What did I get you for your birthday?
Nice little watch.
Yeah, there you go. Let's. Can we throw to that? No, I guess not. Never mind. You'll have to see Nick's watch when he tweets about it. Nick, what's your Twitter handle?
At NJD Regan.
At NJD Regan, R-E-G-A-N. Thank you to Parker, the cameraman here, one of our senior producers here, for coming in here and surprising Nick with that. He's gone white as a sheet now. Oh my goodness. Right, we're going to have a big birthday party in about 11 minutes after the show ends for Nick. But there's another person who's been partying with Chinese spies. Natalie Winters, I need to understand, what was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez doing with this NYPD officer, now an alleged Chinese spy?
Exactly. It's a bizarre story. So AOC has been pictured on her personal Instagram alongside an individual who was born in China, came to the United States, and was recently indicted in New York for acting as a, quote, illegal agent of the Chinese Communist Party. Specifically, his role, allegedly, was to gather intelligence on ethnic Tibetans living in the New York area. So the picture, which you can see on the breaking section of the National Poll right now, shows AOC in between the suspected spy, a lady holding a child, and a cop. This individual served the New York Police Department. So again, there's another layer of hypocrisy there. And AOC for months has been peddling defund the police narrative, infamously saying that, quote, defunding the police means defunding the police, yet she seems comfortable sitting in between two of them, one of them who, as we've said, is spying most likely on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Right. Well, Natalie, it doesn't come as a surprise to me that an overt Marxist would be working with an alleged communist spy. And now we have visual evidence out there. I wonder if any of the media out there are going to ask AOC questions. There are plenty of Capitol Hill reporters, when they're not drinking at the Bull Feathers or at the soon-to-be-closed Capitol Lounge. In fact, one day I'll talk everybody through exactly how DC works, if they let me live long enough to tell the tales. But when they're not doing that, maybe they could just ask AOC what she was doing with this person, and maybe what they spoke about, and if there was any sign that she got from them that he was a CCP spy. That would be good. That would be great to know if a member of Congress knew that. I want to just quickly turn to something. I don't know. We haven't teed this up, so I don't know if I'm on the spot here or not. But no, don't worry. It's birthday. The Meghan Markle story from yesterday went absolutely wild on the National Pulse website. This was the clip of President Trump saying what he said about Meghan Markle, and I'm just personally so glad he said it. So many of us have thought it for so long. People who have followed me for years and years will know that I've been no fan of Meghan Markle, and that I have historically been a fan of Prince Harry. And Meghan Markle really seems to have cuckolded Prince Harry, truly. And President Trump wasn't having it. Markle and Harry put this video together where they effectively attack the president, effectively endorse Joe Biden, and Trump was asked about it in a press conference tonight, and he said, "I'm not a fan of hers. I wish Harry luck. He's going to need it." Your thoughts?
This is why we love President Trump, because he'll say what we're all thinking, whether it's talking about the royals or longer royals or the establishment over here, whoever it is, he's not afraid to power, even though they're not that powerful. But and this to me affirms why we need another 4-year Trump, so we can have more glorious briefing where he says comments like this.
I just want to we've got about 3 minutes left here. Tell the audience what you're working on at the moment. What are we investigating now? So
much. I'm getting into the Biden transition team. As always, Chinese Communist Party links there, both in terms of consultants for the regime, also through big tech, a lot of malign influence going on there. Also, the Biden Foundation has been doing some very curious activism with regards to transgenderism, all the way down to 18-month-old children who they believe are, quote, gender non-conforming. So be on the lookout for that.
Wow, lots of stories, lots of scoops coming soon on thenationalpulse.com. I want to take a moment on this very auspicious occasion of Nick Regan's 45th birthday. No, it's his 30th birthday, but he's got an airline like a 65-year-old. I want to thank him for managing our support function on the site. Fundrealnews.com is the URL. If you want to support our work, it's really important to us. It means so much, and I think it means so much to the Times at the moment, right? The lack of these stories that are coming out from any other outlets. Winters is on the case, and we need your support. Fundrealnews.com, thenationalpulse.com/support, and of course it's Friday tomorrow. Is it Friday tomorrow? It's Friday tomorrow, of course. And we read some of the names out, not the whole names, because we don't want you getting doxxed or attacked or losing your jobs over being wrong, as is the case nowadays. But we anonymize your names and read out some of the names of officers who have joined us over the last week. So if you want to be a part of that, join up now at funrealnews.com. In the meantime, I want to let you know that we will be live tonight. We did one last night with the new Metropolitan Club, Republican Club. We did one 2 nights ago with the New York Young Republicans Club. We'll be live again tonight. Stephen K. Bannon talking about the plot to steal the election from the President of the United States, from Donald Trump. So make sure you tune in. You can find that on my Facebook page. It'll be on the Citizens of the American Republic page, across the War Room Twitter accounts, on the National Pulse Twitter account. We'll make sure that we alert you before we go live this evening, which I think is about 8 p.m. Eastern time. I know that we're going to clash with the President, who's speaking this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. If he goes longer than an hour, there will be a slight overlap. We don't mean to do that, but people are just inundating us with requests to talk to them about the truth, about this coup against the President. Make sure you stick around. Real America's Voice. We'll see you again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you.